this wonderful North American perennial.
Love this plant.
Called Dodecatheon media, and it is flowering away in what we call Swallow's Wheel, the cliff face bit with the waterfall. I think I'm right in saying this is called the starflower, and I suppose you can see that.
They're quite starry. They've always reminded me of a shuttlecock because of those reflexed petals.
If borrowers are real, and I would really hope borrowers are real, then they'll be playing badminton with this of an evening, or fairies maybe, of an evening in the Swallow's Wheel, dancing amongst the waterfall.
Hello and welcome to episode 121 of Talking Dirty. Over at East Ruston Old Vicarage, looking marvellous in magenta and pistachio, we have Alan Edward Herbert Gray, our happy and very handsome horticulturalist.
As usual, she's a whiz with words, is she not? Shining a light on Cambridgeshire, we have Thordis Maria Sophia Fredrickson looking absolutely bonny. And I tell you what, I'm not being rude in any way when I say this, but lipstick enhances your allure.
Just put some on while we were preparing. We were nattering and I thought, I think I need some more colour. So, Lippy, we are ready for an absolute riot of a podcast. Funny you should say Bonnie, Alan, because I think many moons ago when Ben Preston first appeared on the podcast, we called you Ben Bonnie Preston, aptly so. Welcome back, nowadays of Cliff Bank Nursery. And we've had a little bit of a chat off air, so to speak. And I think anyone who started a nursery in the last couple of years, considering particularly the weather of the winter we've just been experiencing, might be asking themselves, why have I done this to myself? Is that how you have been feeling?
Absolutely. It certainly is. I think through this winter, I've asked myself that several times, and it's probably a good indication why there's not many small independent nurseries anymore. I feel if you can weather the storm, then hopefully the sunshine will be ahead in the next few months. We've had about 3 days of sunshine since the autumn up in Yorkshire, but things are starting to flower. The ground this weekend is the first. In fact, this weekend on Sunday evening was the first time I've watered any pots since October. So that's an indication that things are starting to dry out a little bit. But yeah, it's nice to be back on. And obviously, last time I was up at Yorkgate and grabbing things from the garden. This time I brought things from the nursery. And yeah, it's great. It's been great fun. Do you know what? It's been an absolute whirlwind, and me and Laura are doing it together. But it's definitely hard work, without a doubt. Do not set up a nursery. It's a caveat.
I was lucky enough to pop up and see the site when it was all pretty new. So now you're open to the public. What have you done? How have you changed things? I know that not everyone got to see what I got to see, but you know, what have been your first stages of getting the nursery customer ready?
Yeah, well, it was. You obviously saw it at a great point when it was completely derelict, just about. And for those that did see it like that, then it's quite nice for people to come back and see. But we've sort of compartmentalised it. Obviously, the first bit was getting a little sales area, and we quickly found out that a few benches, a bit of gravel, and some sweet chestnut fencing, you've got a nursery pretty quickly. And like up at Yorkgate, when it was a little sweet shop of a nursery, you know, I don't think you need a massive sales area. You've just got to keep it full. So we did that, and actually Laura raked out 23 tons of gravel like 2 evenings before we opened. And the great thing about the sweet chestnut fencing that we've put around the nursery is you don't even need to get the posts in straight because it's all quite rustic. We were literally just smashing the posts in, screwing the fencing on, and it looked perfect, but it's all over the shop. And then we just started from there, really, and getting infrastructure in. We've got a couple of small propagation tunnels. And from the photos, obviously the greenhouse that we've renovated, it's still, I mean, it's a giant cold frame. There's lots of holes in it. And then laying out areas, and obviously we used the pigs to clear the site. So we used up on the left-hand side, we used machine, we used a digger, and then the right-hand side, we used the piggies. So it's been such a hoot, actually. We're looking back, when you're there and in it, you don't see the progression. And then when we sat down and looked back at a year, and you just think, bloody hell, like we haven't stopped. We haven't stopped, and it's really great. We've been doing it together, and then we've got a propagator now 3 days a week, an amazing propagator called Henrietta. That's just about to set up her own nursery, Freckles and Flora.
Oh, lovely.
So she's doing my mail order, doing unusual umbels and asters and hardy annuals. So yeah, it's a real But people coming in, it's been great. People will get a real buzz from it, and obviously in its previous incarnations, it was still Cliffbank Nursery, but there was a chap called Joe Maiden, that was one of Alan's opposite numbers on Radio Leeds. So he did the gardening show on Radio Leeds for 40 years. And the nursery's got a really good name for it. And people want to come in and see what's going on.
Yeah.
But it was interesting because it turned out that Joe was a great gardener, but he was a really untidy fella. So people come in and say, "Oh, wow, it's very tidy."
Yeah. Talking of untidiness, you mentioned this sort of sweet shop almost of plants and your gravel underneath. I mean, some of my favorite plant sales areas, Tim Fuller at Plants as Preference, lots of things seeding in around the plants, and Norfolk herbs, they always have their herbs laid out on these little tables, and all of the little treasures and Viper's bugloss and stuff that seed beneath them really makes it for me. So I don't know if you're allowing things to seed or if things have already started to make homes at the foot of the sales tables, but that sounds like quite an exciting prospect.
Bits and bobs in fact, there was we've got like a picnic table that we got free off Facebook Marketplace, sort of in the sales area. It's very Heath Robinson, lots of beg borrows and steals. But Laura had collected all the corncockle flower heads, the Agrostemma, and they were sort of in a bucket, and they didn't get touched for about 3 weeks. And then this sea of Agrostemmas come up under the bench. There's literally, like, you can't see the corncockle seedlings, so they've had to get weeded out because it was literally just. And she wanted to leave, and I was like, "Nah, we can't be leaving that."
I'd have been with Laura. A sea of corncockles. That sounds fantastic. Nowhere to sit or buy plants.
But yeah, we're looking forward to. In fact, we've just started planting the first beds that are like, as you come into the nursery, there's like a big wooden gate you come in, and the first beds we've planted are either side of the gate. It's dry enough there to plant, but we've got lots of little pockets, and the idea is that everything's going to be in the ground somewhere in the nursery, like at its maturity.
Yeah.
And then people can hopefully buy a smaller. Trying to encourage people to buy as small as possible. And like with you, Alan, at East Ruston, when I was at Yorkgate, if there's something that somebody wants straight out the ground, then and there's plenty of it, you'll just take a piece out, and depends on if you like them or not, doesn't it? And if you like somebody enough, you snap a bit off and give it to them.
So anyone who's in any doubt about whether Ben or Laura like you, just go and see if they will dig something out of the ground for you. And if the answer's no, I'm afraid you've got your answer.
Absolutely. We've had a couple of real good sort of strokes of luck, with some quite big infrastructure bits. Like, we started doing the car park that turned out was going to be a fortune, and then they started digging up the road outside the house.
I know what's coming.
We got 100 tons of road planings, literally straight off the road outside the house. Cash in the hand. Thank you very much. And then we've done our working area, the car park for the nursery. I don't even think we'd have been able to afford to do it, to be quite honest. I don't know what we were thinking, but anyway, it worked out for the best. And then we've built these lovely little, what we call the nursery huts, and they're like log lap. They're not on the round, but they slot together like a jigsaw. And we got them off a wonderful young couple up in the Dales that bought a farm, and there were some old offices. So we built these rustic little wooden huts. That in fact, I've been dressing them this morning for opening again tomorrow. So yeah, so there's all these. It's very Heath Robinson and build as we go, but it's starting to look like a nursery, remarkably. God knows how.
And we know absolutely brimming with exciting plants, because that's the whole point of having a nursery for you, is being able to propagate and get into people's gardens all the planty treasures that you love. So I know there's quite a lot of show and tell off camera. I should say, by the way, if you're watching the video version, obviously Alan has moved. The signal at East Ruston Vicarage is doing its thing, so we're getting another view of Alan's office. If you listen to the audio version, this doesn't matter, but you have got lots of plants, Ben, so we best crack on with things you've got to show us. What would you want to start with?
So, well, we've got a few different options. I've got a couple of woodland bits. I've inherited I was gifted a wonderful collection of anemones, ranunculoides types and nemorosa types from the wonderful Anne Wright at Dryad Nursery. and then I've also collected some along the way. In fact, I'll tell you where I'm going to start. I'm going to start with one that was actually on a trip to Alan's.
Wow.
And it doesn't look its best, but I've brought it because Alan actually took me to Rosie Steele's house when I came to talk to the Norfolk Plant Heritage. And we had a wonderful tour. Alan dashed off, and me and Laura had this tour with Rosie, who obviously has got a wonderful woodland garden full of snowdrops things. And she gave me a little handful of a plant called Anemone flaccida, which is a little species anemone from China, Japan. And it's, in fact, the leaves here look green and sort of ranunculousy, but they start off quite chocolatey. And then they've got this pure white flower. And it's remarkable because, we'll put it this way, I've now got 69 centimetre pots
Hey.
of that plant. And this was only, I think, 3 years ago. In fact, just over 3 years ago that Alan took me to Rosie's. So a remarkably vigorous and easy to divide plant, but one that I love, and obviously it's got a story that goes with it as well now. But this one, really lovely, and I think if it's a real beginner's entry to woodland anemones, and it's a bit, and you still don't really see it very often. Do you grow this one in your garden, Alan?
Yeah, I've only just got it, Ben. I mean, it's a newbie to me, but I mean, I agree with you because it's the kind of plant that you want to see if you're wandering through a woodland area or a fairly shady area. You just want to see it either side of the path.
Carpets of it.
You want masses of it. So I'm going to ask you, can I have your 60 plants to make a decent splash with, please?
Well, I'm going to actually be doing I'm going to do a summer bare root list of the anemones that are available each year, because
That's a good idea.
In total, with the ones I've collected myself and the ones from Anne and the ones, all the various bits and bobs, I've got about 90. And it's continually growing. So my plan is I've got a shade tunnel that's currently in bits on the floor to be put up, but I'm going to make stock beds so that they're all in the ground either side of the shade tunnel, with benches in the middle with them in pots. And I'm going to offer them this time of year. They're going to be for sale in the nursery at plant fairs, and then I'm going to do a summer list where they bear root. And the great thing about these anemones is you divide them when propagators are not dividing. So we do them in July, August.
Yeah.
Which is a propagator's dream, because you're working like mad in the autumn and mad in the spring. But the summertime you're watering and things. But the major job for these is in the middle of summer. So I'm going to offer a bare root list in the summer. Right, I'm going to move on to the Estonian hybrids. So there's a wonderful island off the west coast of Estonia called Hiiumaa Island. It's actually a UNESCO World Heritage Site now. And there's an amazing chap called Tarvi that has collected these and introduced them into cultivation, and he's named them all. So they've all got sort of Eastern European names. So I'm going to start off with Kai. That's Kai. And this is a wonderful, for those of you on the video, he's a really tight double. And basically a lot of these, well, all of these anemones from this island, Hiiumaa Island, they've all been mutated from the fallout from Chernobyl, which I just think is amazing. So this island's covered of all these different anemones that have all been slightly mutated, so they're all different.
Yeah, this is what we heard about, Alan, with the hepaticas with John Massey, that you
Exactly.
yeah, get these really interesting. We'll link to in the video version to the hepatica special we did, but yeah, you can get some really interesting variations there as well.
Which I think it's that from that similar wonderful plant collectors group. I mean, Anne's great friends with John, and Anne actually grows a lot of hepaticas. And I mean, I'm trying my hardest not to get into hepaticas, because that is a big can of worms.
A slippery slope, Ben.
A slippery slope to no money and too many plants. So that one's Kai. So I picked that one because it's very vigorous. It's garden worthy. It's a very tight double. The pedicels not too long, so it's a compact plant. But then they start going all weird and wonderful. So I'm gonna dot between. In fact, I'm just gonna do the Estonian ones first. I'm gonna move on to my favourite one next, and this one's called Prinz Eugen. And Prinz Eugen is sort of bracteate form. So the petals sit very tight to the leaves or the bracts. They sort of petals or flower parts that have transformed into sort of leaf parts. I'm sure the botanists out there will correct me on that, but it's a really cool. So there's no stale
You know
pencil.
what, Ben? That is the nicest looking poinsettia I've ever seen.
It's like a obviously it's yellow form, but it's a beautiful plant. And somebody told me the other day that Prinz Eugen was a German battleship. Whether that's correct or not, I've got no idea. But it's a really good. This is one of the more spenny ones, but it's actually for me it's one of the more vigorous spenny ones. But it's really lovely. And there's a couple of other forms like Star One and Star that have got this bracteate sort of flower morphology that's lovely. So that one is that's a collect for me. It's one I've been admiring all. It's even good. In fact, it's held on for weeks. This has been in flower for 3-4 weeks. So that's definitely one for the Flomo list, Alan.
I love bracteate ones. I just think there's something about them. It's their choir boy ruffs. They're just, and that's like
Yeah, they
choir boy
are.
ruff that's like hit the catwalks of Paris and Milan. Like they've taken the idea and they've turned it super high fashion. It's so ostentatious. Wonderful.
Well, moving on from that one, then we'll go to one of the real dream. In fact, it's called Golden Dream, and this is sort of not as bracteate, but it's got these amazing green sort of stripes. So it's got these changing flower parts in the center. So they're throwing out these sort of flashes of green in the center of the flower. Golden Dream. This is one that's known for amongst the collectors. Not as vigorous. Sort of. This is the sort of thing I'll only be selling like 10 a year or something like that. That's also one of my favourites. But there's going to be lots of favourites, I think. But yeah, so Golden Dream's a beautiful, beautiful plant, and it's just very. But the one thing is with a lot of these anemones is the ones that have these sort of roughs in the centre, there is quite a bit of variability even on each plant. Even on, there's 5 pedicels coming off one stem there, and the flower form's different on each plant, on each flower head. So there is a bit of variability, but that one's a beauty.
Yeah, like little bits of leaf in amidst bright buttercup yellow.
Yeah, exactly that.
Shiny petals and
the fact that there's not much of it, that is going to make it even more precious. You're going to want it even more, aren't you? Because there's not easy to get.
Scarcity.
No. There is. I think there's. We'll see if they catch on. Hopefully, when I keep waxing lyrical about them, people are going to start collecting them. But I'm actually going to jump off the ranunculoides for a second, because there's another one that's sort of in the same boat. That's not from Estonia. That's actually from Norway. That's similar mutation, and I've got 2 from a plant that I divided, and this one's called Explosion. So this one was collected in Norway, and this is actually a nemorosa type rather than a ranunculoides type. And I've got 2 forms to show you. I'm going to show you them next to each other. So again, we've got this rough bracteate, but this is Explosion. So we've got sort of a white petals with this explosion of rough green and stripes. And then equally to that, this is the same plant, which is much whiter and less roughage in the middle. But they were divided from the same. They were snapped off the same rhizomes. So there's quite a bit of variability. But again, Explosion is an absolute whopper of a plant. It's a beautiful, beautiful form.
And like a bit of a mauvey pink flush to it as well. It looks like.
Absolutely, yeah. At the base of these little green roughs, you can probably just see if those of you that are watching on the camera, they've got sort of this vivid green flush to the base of the flower parts. Very, very detailed and quite amazing, really.
That's wonderful. I saw that on your Instagram, and yes, the Flomo was strong with me.
Yeah, it's can I say? So what have we got? So obviously, the more of it, I'm going to move back onto the yellows. Just to show you the variety in the flower form, and this one's called Sirje, and this is sort of not as double as the others, but a purer flower, and it's got a very, very tight. It's got many stamens in the centre of the flower. It's like a little buttercup, very yellow. So it's single outer, and then it's got this. In fact, it is technically a single, but it's just got so many stamens in the centre that it looks double.
It's like
So
a
that's
kind of anemone-scented dahlia.
It is.
You've got like a
yeah.
little pom-pom in the middle.
Little pom-pom. So it's like this tight little pom-pom, multiple stems in the middle around this sort of single, and it's bright yellow flower and bit taller. And there's sort of there's two flowers from each stem. So yeah, that's a beautiful one. It's just going over a little bit now, but that's been in flower for a good few weeks. So that's slightly
and they're
different.
so cheerful as well.
They are.
Those bright yellows.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. And where I've got them on the table together at the minute, there's a sort of a sea, and it's been good actually, because at first glance, when I was first looking at them, it is quite overwhelming because there's a lot to look at, and you think, oh, they all look the same, but they don't. And I think when they're in the sweeps of when they're planted en masse and in the trays where there's multiple groups, that's when they're at the best, really. So yeah, in fact, this is why I picked this one, because this one on the bench looks, again, it's another tight double, and at the base of the pedicels, again, it's got that pinky. I'm going to try and show you the leaf. It's got a pink flush to the base of the leaf, and again, sort of fully double flower, really compact. And I think this one and another one that I've got next to it called Kreet have probably, I think, are the ones that I'm going to try and do some small carpets under the wooded area that we've got. I think this, rather than going too crazy with the explosions and the golden dreams, I'm going to use these ones that are vigorous and are going to be easy to divide, and also making it a bit more accessible to everybody, because they're not all going to be. Not everybody's going to want an explosion. People are going to want good garden-worthy plants. So yeah, this one's Dagerōt.
Dagerōt.
Beautiful. No, nice names,
that's...
aren't they? We've got your last yellow one, and then we'll move on. And this one's Leida, much taller. This one's at about 20 centimetres. And again, not as tight. I'll show you the flower. Not as tight double. It's sort of semi-double. Very beautiful and very symmetrical.
With a sort of greenish centre.
Yeah, ever so very, very tight green centre, but a bit more open and not as tightly doubled as, say, Dagerōt. And then it is a bit taller, so this stands up a bit taller. Yeah, say it's about 20 centimetres. Again, another good vigorous one. Maybe for pushing up through some Melica or something like that, it'd look quite nice.
Yeah, it's much rangier.
Yeah. It is much rangier. So that's Leida. So that's the yellow ones, and then I've brought a few. I brought one that I'd never seen before, and I'm going to show you two next to each other, because one of them you may have heard of, which is in the trade, which is salt and pepper. I don't know if you've come across salt and pepper, Alan.
No.
So salt and pepper. So it looks like it's been. It literally looks like it's had a bit of a pepper shaker over it. So it's got these browny purple ruffs to the center of the flower parts. Again, the sort of going sort of bracteate form. And they look like they've had sort of pepper sprinkled on them. So
yeah.
So, and it's not the tidiest plant. So that I'm going to show you one next to it that's called Thekla, and Thekla is, again, probably it's a top 5, certainly a top 5, which is very similar to salt and pepper, but it's much tidier. And you've got this beautiful, again, semi-double, and it's got that slightly purpley brown ruff to the central flower parts. But it's I'm going to hold them next to each other. Sorry for those of you that are listening in. But you've got a very similar in terms of the composition, but it's a much, much tidier plant. Thekla is a real beauty. In fact, me and Anne were looking.
They're just so unusual. You're just not used to seeing things like it. That's the plants that stop you and make you think, hang on a minute, what's going on there?
What's going on? And how's that evolved? And it's but again, that's Thekla's a nemorosa type, not a ranunculoides. But yeah, look at that. I mean, it's just
this thing of radiation on plants from, hydrogen, I suppose, hydrogen bombs, whatever it was. I mean, it does have an amazing effect. And I'm just wondering, Ben, we hear that sometimes you people have bought aeoniums, for instance, from the Far East that have very strange colouring. Then, you know, lurid red and carmine and purple stripes and things. And I've heard that that is caused by radiation. Do you know anything about that?
No, I don't know, but I can imagine that it could be the case. There's lots of, not just in the plant world, but in the animal world as well. There's these strange mutations. I'm gonna go a bit off topic here, but certainly I know around Chernobyl that there's wolves there that have sort of genetically evolved so that they're basically immune to cancer.
Yeah.
And they've done these studies and tests, and they're evolved through mutation, and they can't get certain diseases and cancer diseases that previous generation of wolves didn't get. And obviously there's areas like that where obviously we as humans, we're staying well clear. But animals have started to recolonize the wilder areas around there. And there's amazing mutations that I mean the scientists are still finding out now. So it's an amazing thing these mutations. Obviously it's through terrible, you know, misfortune why they've occurred, but it's quite an interesting phenomenon.
Yeah. Well, certainly very interesting plants to look at for sure. Right, where are you going next,
Right.
Mr. Preston?
Two left, two anemones left, and then if anybody's anemoed out, I apologise profusely.
Can you be anemoed out?
Anemoed out. So this one is a bit more well recognised in the trade. It's another white nemorosa type, but it's got a much darker foliage. And it's got for those of you that grow Vestal, which is sort of in the trade, you've got this sort of really tight white attractive double, but it's got much darker foliage. It's almost purple when it comes out, and it's still much darker green than the rest of the nemorosa and ranunculoides now. Very vigorous.
What's it called?
Flore Pleno. Anemone nemorosa, Flore Pleno.
And of course, with the white flowers and the dark leaves, it's such a lovely contrast.
It is, and that's what's nice. And there was another one that I couldn't bring because it's gone over. It's a German cultivar called Jummer's Fienrood. Spelled
I spell that one. Yeah, I know.
Yeah, Jummer's Fienrood, which is actually got a single pink flower with very, very dark foliage, and it's top 5 for me. But it's gone over. It's one of the earlier ones. But that's definitely one that so there's quite a lot of variation. It's each your own with these things. You'll find I'm actually more drawn to the nemorosa types probably over the ranunculoides. That's how I felt this spring. Maybe it'll be different next spring. And then the final one, which is from Denmark, another Scandinavian one, is another bracteate form it's called Denmark. And it's very, very rough.
So beautiful.
But basically on this one, just about all the flower parts have changed. So the base they've got these little leaf parts, and it's ruffled white and green and a flush of sort of chocolatey. But this one's a really beautiful one called Denmark. And there's a few others. There's things like viridescens and virescens that are sort of well known in the trade. And this is probably, it just takes it to another level.
Yeah. I think I must have had one of those you just mentioned in the past, that kind of very bracteate, not even really a flower, but that kind of hybrid between a ruffle of leaves and a flower. That's gorgeous. I love these anemones. I'm so pleased you came at anemone season, Ben.
So no. So they're the ones that were the sweep earlier that I picked out as sort of the ones to bring on. But as the plan is, I mean, it's all. I'm making it up as I go along, really. So I think this idea with where we're putting the shade tunnel and displaying them so that I can have groups come and visit, and especially like the HPSs and the plant heritage groups in the Alpine Garden Society, actually having them in groups where they're going to be in very shallow, effectively like raised beds. They'll only be 15, 20 centimeters deep down either side of a shade tunnel. And then they're on the bench in the middle. So I want to really show off the collection so that people can differentiate them. And like with snowdrops, I suppose, when things are en masse, they can look very different than they do in a pot with two in flower like you buy them. So
something you said earlier, Ben, I'm just thinking to myself, how lucky we, the general public, are to have somebody like you, a nurseryman, and well, to have a nurseryman like you, really, because your knowledge is absolutely encyclopedic. And I think, it's wonderful. I mean, I just think that, well, Cliffbank Nursery deserves to be worldwide known, not least of all, the British Isles, for goodness sake. I want to ask one question. Are you thinking of doing mail order?
Eventually.
Yeah.
Eventually.
I can't think why Alan's interested.
It's there might be special mail orders for certain people. But yeah, it's a difficult one really, because as we've set the nursery up, and it has been really hard. I'm not gonna, these are wonderful plants, but it's been really, really hard work.
Yeah.
Much harder than anything I've had to do before.
Yeah.
And we did all that big project at Yorkgate and managed lots of people, but it's been really tough. And actually, it's gotta be worth it at some point in terms of, I've got to make a living. But
the reason I asked the question is that many years ago, when Wootton's of Wenniston near Halesworth in Suffolk first started their nursery, Mike Loftus, I mean, I got to know him very, very well. And he started doing mail order. And I just said to him one day, I said, how's the mail order going? And he said, well, put it this way. If we didn't do mail order, we wouldn't be here.
Yeah.
And it made that much difference.
I think, well, that's it's the way we are with the setup of the nursery at the minute. We've sort of, we've sat down, and the first and foremost, the plants. And I still, I'm a novice. I'm a gardener novice nurseryman. That's how I class myself. Very, very early days. I've worked bits in nurseries, but I've not worked for years and years in a nursery. So, which to some degrees may help because I'm working it out myself.
Yeah.
So we're killing plants, but also having great successes. And I think it's probably a good way to go in the modern world, because we will work out our way in this area of the world. But yeah, mail order is definitely something. I think like offering the bare root list in the summer of the anemones, and certainly early in the year we'll be doing bare root with some of the grasses and the perennials. I'll maybe try and there was a wonderful nursery that closed a couple of years ago called Pitcairn Nursery up in Scotland.
Yeah.
And the lady that ran that, I mean, she used to put a list out on the 1st of April at midnight, and you'd have to wait up. And
I remember.
And erythroniums and corydales and all these wonderful little iris. In fact, I got a wonderful iris called Russian Kabligar. It's a Juno iris that's in the stand at the front of the house. But things like that. I mean, it'd be nice to get to a point where I offer a choice list at certain times of the year.
Yeah.
I certainly don't want to become. I want to be a destination nursery that people come and see.
Yeah.
And I think people, in a weird way, and it's probably going to be to the detriment of me making any money, is I want people to earn it. They've got to come. They've got to earn it. They've got to get their asses here. And we're right. We're situated between Harlow Cow. We're ranked bang between Harlow Cow and Yorkgate.
Yeah.
And we're finding that we're getting a group visits booking this summer. Garden clubs that are going to go to Harlow Cow, they're going to come to me. They're going to go to Yorkgate, and also Goldsborough Hall as well. That's getting better and better by the year. They do a cracking afternoon tea, and the gardens there are amazing. Mark, the head gardener, they're introducing tropically bits and these wonderful big herbaceous borders. So hopefully, when I started at Yorkgate, I really wanted to help put the north back on the map a bit more.
Yeah. And you did
a little bit, yeah. I was helped it along the way a little bit. So there's some great gardens up here, and I think hopefully coach parties will start. There's so many gardens down in Kent and different parts of the country. But yeah, I'm a stout Yorkshireman. I want people to come to Yorkshire and see the plants run hard.
Yeah. I'm on. Thank you.
Welcome.
This is Matt. Ben.
Hi, Ben.
Hey, mate. How are you doing?
Hi, Matt.
Yeah, good. Thanks. Right, I'll leave you to it then.
Say hello, Thordis.
I did.
Oh.
There was somebody had a tray full of Trillium Courabashii, flowering size, and they were £3 each.
What?
And I walked in, and this was on the sales table with all the people, and I said, "Can I buy them all?" She said, "No, you cannot. You can have 3."
Oh.
And I literally bought the whole tray. And she said, "No, you can have 3." I mean, I went to a plant fair the following weekend, and they were £25 each.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Woo! Wow. God, Alan is so jealous. Like, talk about FLOMO.
There was plenty of that today. Definitely got a little Dreamcast. We've lost Alan.
Lost that.
He's just frozen.
Just frozen there.
It sort of
The
caught
slightly
me.
quizzical sort of look.
I was sort of losing my train of thought because Alan was like, he's gone.